Hello and welcome to the build up here in Balsall in partnership with Ladbrokes, where every week we look ahead to the biggest events of the sporting weekend. Now, we already spoke to Stephen Ferris this week to look ahead to Ireland versus Argentina in the rugby after such a brilliant week and win against New Zealand last week. You can listen to that back on our YouTube channel or wherever you find our stuff. Also, later on today, we're going to speak to Eric Donovan about Jason Quigley's massive world title fight coming up this Friday night in New Hampshire. Jason, obviously regular on the show, Ladbrokes ambassador, so we can't wish him well enough this weekend. But it's football I want to talk about now, and delighted to say that we have Kevin Doyle on the line, as always, to talk about the return of the Premier League, I suppose, Kevin. But it's been a couple of weeks since we spoke. I was off watching Ireland matches on paternity leave, hoping to God that the baby wouldn't wake up during them. And, you know, I had something to hope for because they were enjoyable. They were, you know, entertaining, I would say, at times. Even when it was 0-0 against Luxembourg, I was thinking to myself, this is actually a good match. It's rare we could say that about Ireland. And job done for Stephen Kenny, like two good results. And it's hard to say that the corner hasn't been turned at this point.
Yeah, positive performances. As you said, the goals, you know, we're always relying on, you feel like a centre half or a set piece or hoping for a Shane Duffy or whatever. And it wasn't. It was, you know, the goals were good. Real good play all round. Enjoyable to watch. I think that's the sort of, you know, we got results and enjoyable to watch. That combination that you're always looking for with Ireland over the years. We've been able to get results and maybe not enjoyable to watch, or we haven't been able to get results in recent years. We were the worst of both worlds, but in the last 3 or 4 games, getting a few results and enjoyable to watch. And, you know, Luxembourg, listen, you're expected to beat Luxembourg and you don't want to get too carried away about that at all, of course. But most of the Portugal game, you know, 2 performances against Portugal in the last couple of months where we could have easily won those games. Things had gone our way, a little bit more luck, and it wouldn't have been totally unjustified winning those games. So, yeah, definitely, you know, green shoots or whatever term you want to put on it. You know, everyone, the whole country, I think, fairly positive as well. Yeah, and then I look back at the group, all right, and I look at where we are in the group, and you know what, if we got those couple of results against Portugal, hadn't have messed up at home against Luxembourg, all of a sudden you're thinking, you know, we could have come second in that group or whatever. We could have challenged and really made it interesting right up to the end. But listen, maybe hoping for too much. But you know, definitely a good week for Ireland, for Stephen Kenny, and for the whole team. The players look like they're buzzing as well and full of confidence and enjoying it.
Yeah, sometimes you can sense really with a team, a squad, that there's the togetherness isn't bullshit in the way it might be a lot of the times you see it. And it's like sometimes you don't know, and sometimes you can sense that it is. You're never for sure that it's chaos unless things are really, really bad. But you do get that sense. And I was thinking of this when it was like, how can we compete again? Because we might not have the caliber of player that we used to have. But we see it all the time with teams overachieving in international football, and it comes from being a club-like team. You know, on whereas France, Spain, Portugal will never have that because they don't. They're all playing at a really, really high level. They come together. It's an afterthought in a way, you know, maybe not at a World Cup, but in qualifiers. And we do seem to have that club mentality again. That's what we always were told was the key to the Charlton era.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we lost that sometime along the way. You were obviously in millions of Ireland squads, and atmosphere always seemed good. But was it that kind of feeling where you could feel like you could overachieve?
Yeah, it was. It is always. I don't know whether it is because the majority, always, 99% of players don't play in Ireland, and coming back home, that feeling you're coming home to join the squad, or does that give us an extra, I don't know, togetherness or whatever? We're all sort of in that travelling home together, back at home, and feeling. And this Ireland squad, a lot of players aren't playing for their clubs, so they're getting to play for their country. They're getting games. That's bringing them together. They've had a lot of stick, a lot of pressure put on them, and they're trying to all sort of get experience in international football together. I'd imagine that's bringing them together, and they're playing well. And you know, international football, a lot of teams aren't that organised. They get together, they've only a few days, and they're probably lazy, I think, and it's not that big a deal, especially in the qualifying campaign. A bit more so when they get into the actual competitions, the Euros and World Cup, they become a more serious outfit. But in the qualifying campaign, if you can get a group of players together and be really well organised, I really think you can get results that are more than the sum of your parts, if you know what I mean. And that looks like the Ireland squad in the last few weeks. Listen, it wasn't the case, obviously, up till the last 3 or 4 games, but it looks like they've come together, and he's getting more out of them than they're showing at club level in the last few games. And that's what you want your manager to do. You know, any manager to come in and manage great players and get them going. But really good manager comes in and gets players that aren't, I suppose, gets them outperforming their what they should be, and I think we haven't in recent weeks. And that's what Ireland need to do and historically have done. So if we're to ever get to World Cups and do reasonably well in tournaments, we're never going to have as good a quality of player as the top countries. We have to outperform what we have and make the best of what we have, which is some decently technically good players, but really use that team side of it, that work ethic side of it, on top of being able to play some football.
Yeah, absolutely. You've been very good at kind of straddling the middle, and I don't mean that in a sitting on the fence way, but you've been refusing to kind of get on the whole everybody has to be extreme. You think everything Kenny does is perfect, or you think everything he does is terrible, and we need a better manager, etc. And you've been trying to just take every bit of analysis as it comes. And it's we've talked about it many times. We're at that stage now where it is kind of decision time. Like, most people are leaning towards, let's lock this down, let's bring it through the Euros. They've earned that, they've showed enough in the graph. Would you be kind of on that side, or do you think, along with Brady, that we should wait a while?
No, I'd be definitely leaning to that. It's like, I think, what's the alternative? I don't think there is an alternative, to be honest with you. Unless the results had been catastrophic in the last few months, I think the only option is to continue with Stephen and hope it keeps on improving. And like you as well, I think we've both been trying to be fairly, like, not have the goggles on either way, that we're both open-minded to, listen, he's doing some good things, and I disagree with some of the things he did as well. But I think in the main, in the last few months especially, been positive. So my only thing, I suppose, with contracts is with Stephen, and in general in all sports in Ireland, we're desperate always when the manager to give him a new contract before his contract's up. In rugby we see it. We've seen it before in Ireland in soccer. When there's probably 6 months. I think his contract's not to the end of next summer. There's lots of games to play between now and then, and your only worry is if they did have a bit of disaster and things really did turn sour, you've got 2 years ahead of him. And when I suppose there's no one going to come and take him off us in the next few months, so we do have time to wait. It isn't as big a panic as maybe it's made out to be, but I think in the main he probably deserves to get it now and let him focus and concentrate and get on with what it is. But I'm not against the FAI waiting either, for obvious reasons that they've been bitten in the past, like the IRU have, like other organisations in Ireland. When we rush to give a contract, it always seems to go downhill straight away afterwards. God, it does feel like we're at the beginning of something here rather than the end. But I mean, you actually are so right. There's been so many examples of that throughout both sports, really, for both main manager contract sports that we have in this country for a long time. Okay, that's Ireland. They're going to be put to bed for a little while. We're not going to see them again until March. Things are going to be positive in 2022 when we start our build up. But it's going to be a long run of club football now for a little while. People have been complaining about all the international breaks. The Liverpool United diehards out there that don't want to watch the Ireland matches, they get pissed off when international breaks come around. Well, there's none for a long time now. I think we've got 4 months or something like that of straight club football, which should be really interesting, because the Premier League is, for me anyway, it's like fascinating at the moment. I was looking at the fixtures this weekend, and we'll do 1, 2, 3 in a few minutes, and there's some big games there. But even the crappy fixtures are interesting at the moment, because if you look at the 3:00 fixtures tomorrow, you've got Watford and Man United, and let's not get into United here, but Ranieri versus Solskjaer, and God only knows what happens if Watford get a result in that game. But the other 3 games: first game for Steven Gerrard as manager of Villa at home to Brighton. First game for Dean Smith as manager of Norwich at home to Southampton. And first game for Eddie Howe as manager of Newcastle at home to Brentford. They're all happening at the same time. They all appear winnable games. Like, there just feels like there's just going to be a buzz around people watching Premier League stuff tomorrow. A buzz for those...
Saturday, sorry.
Yeah, a buzz for those clubs for the first day anyway.
Yeah.
The Dean Smith one is mad, isn't it? Like, he gets sacked because they're like down the bottom. Where are they? Down 16th, gets sacked, not good enough, and then they get hired by a team more bottom, hoping that he'll get them out of relegation. So I read yesterday he was on holiday. He went on holiday and he flew back. His wife or family must be delighted with him. He flew back from his holiday to go to Norwich and sign up there.
New York to Norwich. We've all, who hasn't made that trip by choice?
He's gone from a bad situation into a worse situation with Norwich, and they sacked their manager after they finally got a win. Which seemed like madness. He did really well there for a few years, and he finally gets that win. I think it was our first win since last March, and then they sack him after the game. Just the way it is. But yeah, interesting games. Really interesting. The Newcastle one, Eddie Howe as well. How he'll go there and the pressure he'll be under straight away. Yeah, and
Yeah.
your club. How do you feel about Stephen Gerrard? That one is intriguing as well. There's all of them I'm looking forward to, but that one more than any, I'd say.
I think for a lot of people, I think that's the benefit of the celebrity manager, which is, I think, something I was talking about a little bit on Twitter, in that you always do worry that for these guys, the Lampards, the Gerrards, the Rooneys, whoever else it might be, that, it's a little bit about their journey. And they're shockingly open about it. It's like, this is, I want to be Liverpool manager. That's what I want to do. And I think what for me, what that translates sometimes, and I've seen it with Gerrard, but mainly with Lampard, is that they will do this because it's about them. They will slip into, well, that's not what I told the players to do. And Gerrard did that early in his Rangers career. But if you think about it, you haven't seen that in the last 2 years, I'd say, with Gerrard. He does seem like he's a coach who's at least on a trajectory of learning. Whereas maybe with Frank, it was all a little bit too soon at Chelsea. And we've seen there was an article about him and about him not getting really a look in for a Villa job or the Norwich job and, various different things. So maybe it's jumping the gun a little bit on that. Rangers fans are absolutely devastated by this, which if you're a Villa fan, definitely gives you a little bit of hope.
Yeah, I like the way Gerrard as well. Rangers, a massive club, lots of pressure in a smaller league.
Yeah,
he did a really good job there, and so he's used to there's more pressure, I'd imagine, managing Rangers and more intensity than managing Aston Villa. So he's used to that side of it, while being successful as well in his first job there. Not easy to do, Managers before him weren't. He's managed to get. You see, the Rangers fans are devastated. He's left. The one negative I would say is, I think a week before, he basically came out and said, "No chance of not going anywhere here for the long haul."
When they were talking about Newcastle, yeah.
So how do you believe a word he says then if you're a player or whatever in the future? He really nailed his colours to the mast. I've seen that interview, and you think, yeah, well, he isn't going to be here to the end of the season or ever. So I suppose he would have liked him to seen it out at Rangers even to the end of the season. He sort of left him in a little bit in a good position, obviously, but also in a bit in limbo. But yeah, I think he might do well, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like I said, I like the way he's gone about it in his coaching career, his manager career so far.
We laugh about Villa a good bit, Kevin, because I'm a supporter of them, and we'll just have a kind of a quick, glance at them, but rarely enough talk about them. What do you think? Like, this is, for me anyway, this feels like a job that is there to have achievements in. You've got rich owners, you've got money to spend, and you've got a squad there that does seem like, if everything clicked, it might not be the most well put together squad to get 11 players out on the pitch, but there's talent there up and down the field, really. There does feel like that they're maybe one or two signings away from being at least a contender for a top 8, kind of top 7, kind of insurgency, I suppose.
Yeah, and they're not cast adrift. They're not in the bottom 3. They're a couple of points out of it. They're only a couple of wins, a week of good form.
Yeah,
been in the top half of the table. So, and you said they have money, which is key to the whole thing. In January, if they can stay the head above water, out that bottom 3 come January, they'll have good options and what players they might be able to get in. So, yeah, that's the way he'll have been looking at it, Stephen Gerrard. More attractive option right now than the Newcastle job. Might be the case in a year's time or 6 months' time if Newcastle can stay up, but right now more attractive. And if he does well there, he'll be lined up for the Liverpool job whenever that comes about. He wouldn't have gone straight from Rangers to Liverpool, but going from Rangers to Villa, doing well with Villa, will get him into a position where he could be the next Liverpool manager, which is what as he said, he talks about and looks like his main aim is in life.
They're playing Newcastle are playing Brentford. You mentioned them, Eddie Howe. I think there's a fascination with that as well, along with the Gerrard stuff. But Brentford, kind of, there's a part of them. I don't know if they remind you of the Reading team that came up feisty, or seem people on the outside probably thinking they're overachieving, but you guys probably thinking, hold on, we're actually a good bloody football team here. And think of that, and also flicking around the channels. You've got a newborn baby, Kevin. You remember this yourself. They fall asleep on you on the couch. You're sort of stuck there for an hour or two, and you're flicking around daytime TV looking for something to do. And you come across Sky Sports Premier League's random 15-minute highlight packages of games from a long time ago. And what should I see? Only Reading 6, West Ham United 0 from 2007, early 2007. Alan Kirbishley, manager of West Ham, looking absolutely horrified on the sideline as Reading go full on Barcelona at the Majeski.
Yeah.
You got 2. Stephen Hunt got 1. I think maybe Steve Sidwell got another. Leroy Lida got 1. You absolutely hammered them. I think it was 5-0 at half time. It made me just want to talk to you a little bit about that Reading team, right? Because you had so many good players on that team. People would never have been that familiar with Reading, a championship team, a lot, whatever. And then you guys came up. We had the Irish interest. We all paid attention here. Shane Long was on the team as well at the time. And I just think it was a really enjoyable time, I suppose, for us watching on with the Irish sort of trio there. But what I might have forgotten was that it was a bloody good team as well. Like, you were a really good Premier League team for a couple of years. Do you remember that game in particular?
Yeah, I do. I particularly remember that game. I think it could have been New Year's Day, or maybe the gap between New Year's and the FA Cup first rounder. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, it was a Christmas game. Yeah, wouldn't forget it was 6-0, probably our biggest win in the Premier League. West Ham were spending all that money, had just had them new owners. I think it was around that time where they were spending McBillions. I think that could have been Kerbishley's first game, maybe.
Wow.
It was either his first game or his last game. But yeah, no, listen, it was good times. We finished 8th in the league that year. I think outside Europe on goal difference, and that team, you go through that team. There was only about 14 players in the squad, 15 players. We had very little subs. We used the same team week in, week out. We lost Steve Sidwell on a free transfer at the end of that season to Chelsea. In that game, you're looking at anyone watches back that highlights package, does be on and off Sky every now and again. I happen to see it. Nicky Shorey, the left back, one of my goals. He mazes up the pitch from left back, dribbles
diagonal,
diagonally to the right wing and puts it on the plate for me a yard out from goal. He was a fabulous player, Nicky Shorey. Beautiful left foot. Got a couple of England caps, I think. As good as any left back I've seen, but probably, you maybe won't like me saying this, lacked the dedication to be the top left back athletically, physically. Probably didn't look after himself well enough to get, had all the football ability, were a very good player, but and just maybe not physically strong or quick enough and to get to the top clubs, but really good player. That whole team went through it. You could go through it, and every player had a couple of seasons there where they had the seasons of their career.
Yeah, there was a point in the commentary, actually, I think it might have been after that assist for yourself, where the co-com, whoever it was talking about Shorey, going like, this guy has to be England's first choice. And I was thinking to myself, that's when Ashley Cole's in his prime, and Wayne Bridge is there knocking around as well. Like, it's not as if they didn't have left backs in England at the time, and this guy's like adamant that Nicky Shorey is the best left back in England. It just shows you again, these things can be forgotten over time, and maybe when you don't play for like a more fashionable club that does it, for 20 years in a row, but they did have, it doesn't get as well remembered, but you did have a kind of a 2 or 3 year window there where just everything was right for Reading. And can I ask you as well how much that was to do with Steve Coppell, or what type of a coach he was? Because there's a sense in me that he was a kind of a go out there and play lads, and everybody loved him and everybody played for him. Or is that a misconception? Was he a technical coach, really well organized?
Oh, listen, we would have been well organized, really well organized, set pieces, things like that. We spent hours practicing set pieces, but Steve didn't do them. He was a delegator, so we had a defensive coach, a guy called Wally Downs, which people have probably heard. He took the defense, hours of video work with him, and he was a joker and a messer, but really, on the ball when it came to ahead of time, I would say, with video analysis and working with the defense and taking them off and working with them as a group instead of us. A lot of the time in football, you'd be just all together, all doing the same trend, the defense, forward, midfield. When you think about it, it doesn't really make any sense. So the midfielders had a coach. Steve was more maybe a bit involved with the attackers. I loved him because he was a winger himself. So I suppose that rubbed off on how, he would speak to the forwards. He'd speak to me personally. He'd be, take people on, Kevin, excite me, run at people. He wanted his team. That game winning 6-0, totally, there was no up 2-3 and getting a half time and, let's sit back now. It was go again. Which was brilliant to play for. If you're an attacking player, it was a joy. Later, a lot of my career, I was thinking back on this afterwards, most of my managers were defenders or defensive midfielders in their career, and you can see that how they think about the game. It becomes you have to hold the ball up, you have to lay it off or whatever. Instead of Steve Coppell's thing was turn, run at people, get in the box, score goals. Enjoy football. So, but yeah, I suppose he was the league manager. The whole of England Premier League, everything. 2 years in a row that he won the award of Manager of the Year. And unfortunately, he never, when you look from the outside, you probably thought that he was just to go out and play, but he was a lot more. I think he'd be really suited to a big job, but he didn't seem to want it. He didn't want that or whatever. And after the Reading thing, when he left Reading, he didn't really go on. I think he took a director of football role somewhere, but never went on to manage really anyone after that. And it was such a waste because he was, I felt anyway, sort of ahead of his time in how he managed teams and how he spoke to players and how he delegated to coaches.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah, a bit of a loss to the game, I suppose. But that, again, great memories of that thing. Just again, if people do come across that game, you have Stephen Hunt scoring a header, which is weird enough on its own. You've got Kevin scored 2, one which he absolutely robs off the toe of Leroy Lida. But I'm sure he deserved it. I'm sure he'd do the same to you. And
he would have, yeah.
He gets his own in the second half. You mentioned Nicky Shorey, and the other person who jumps out with the highlights is Steve Sidwell in his prime, right before his move to Chelsea, as you say yourself, and just looked like the complete midfielder. And again, I'm talking about a 10-minute highlight package, but I do remember that as well. As like Sidwell was in some ways the standout player on that Reading team. He was the guy who kind of lifted. He was their Roy Keane, really, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. It was that type of player. Boxed up. Now midfielders always a sitting midfielder, or an attacking midfielder, or whatever. Ball winning midfielder. He was everything. He had such an engine. He scored goals. He probably got 10 goals in the season before in the Championship. I'm not sure. He got a good few goals in that season in the Premier League as well. But he was back defending, he was winning tackles, he was hard as nails, and he could pass the ball. So he couldn't pigeonhole him in a position, which maybe later in his career affected him. And people become more, well, I need a defensive midfielder or whatever. But he was just box to box, along with James Harper, who was beside him. The two of them were real engines, really up and down the pitch. Steve Sidwell was really brave, because Reading were throwing contract offers at him, basically weekly at the time, and he didn't. He stayed strong and let his contract run out and left on a free transfer, and the whole of England wanted to sign him. He ended up going to Chelsea. I'm just saying that he was going on a free transfer. He didn't put out one tackle up to he played every game and every minute up to the last game of the season, never missed a tackle, never tried to go, could get injured here, whatever. He didn't. He stayed playing like he had a 10-year contract from Reading on the table, and nothing could happen. And it wasn't the case. He signed for Chelsea after the end of the season on a free. Very brave of him to do it. And listen, he went to Chelsea, who were at the peak under Mourinho and spending billions and billions, it seemed like, and had all the best players in the world. So he struggled there a little bit to break into the team. But yeah, he was fabulous at Reading.
Yeah. Absolutely. Nice to go back on a Reading memory lane. We don't talk for the few Reading fans in the country, but I think there was a few at that time, to be honest, Kevin. We all kind of enjoyed watching a group of Irish lads and to come up from the Championship and, going to finish 8th in the Premier League and sort of make that impact straight away. It was a pretty great time, to be honest. Before we finish up, we're going to do Ladbrokes 1, 2, 3. This is where you can play for absolutely free now on ladbrokes.com or on the app, where you just pick the scores in 3 of this weekend's Premier League games. If you get 1 score right, you get a €1 free bet. If you get 2, you get a €5 free bet. And if you get all 3, you win €100 cash. Kevin's going to make his picks now. First of all, Kevin, the big one on Saturday evening, Liverpool versus Arsenal. Liverpool, if we talked about this at the start of the season when we were talking about Arsenal in crisis, Liverpool went back to their best, and we'd be like, oh, here we go. This could be 3 or 4. Arsenal have been phenomenal lately. They just seem to have got it together. This is a big test for them, though. So even though Liverpool have had 2 bad Premier League results in a row, I suppose they threw in a big win against Atletico Madrid in the Champions League in the middle there. You still don't feel like Liverpool are massively out of form. They just had a couple of bad days. And, West Ham are a very good team as well. Let's not forget that. But this is I just find this very interesting because I think it'll tell us a lot about where both teams are on Saturday night.
Yeah, look, like Arsenal, can you imagine after the first few weeks of the season, they're only 3 points off Man City, 2 points off Liverpool. Some turnaround. You'd be delighted for Arteta as well, because he does come across as, he got under a lot of pressure, a lot of stick. He comes across as a good, decent man who knows his football and has been trying to build something there and isn't losing patience. And some of their signings were questioned in the summer, and now the opposite, everyone's saying how good their signings were. So I'm going to go for a draw in this game. I have a sneaky feeling Arsenal are on that run, are going to get something out of this. I go for a score draw, a goal apiece. Be brilliant to see Arsenal back, competing again. They're owned by the owners of my old club in America, the same crowd, and they've got a lot of stick to Cronkies, a lot of stick. But it doesn't need about. They got a lot of stick in America as well. With my club was Colorado Rapids, and they got a lot of stick at the time that they weren't making the right signings and that they were planning too much for the long run and weren't spending enough money now. And now the Colorado Rapids in America have won their conference and are in the MLS playoff semi-finals. Maybe it's an omen for Arsenal. Their manager is about to get manager of the year out there, I think. So things are looking up for that group, the Cronkies and the football side of both their clubs going well, and maybe they're the ones, in comparison to Man United, who are just fire money left, right, and centre and just try to stick a plaster on things. Arsenal seem to have a sort of a long-term plan in place and have stuck to it and haven't, deviated from it, it seems anyway, and paying off for them so far this season.
Yeah, they own the Rams as well, which they obviously moved from St. Louis to LA. But the funny thing is, when you think about Arsenal, you think, are they being prudent? Or there's too much? The Rams are this is completely separate, but they're existing in this completely different stratosphere than everybody else in the NFL, where they're not worried about building through the draft round. They're just buying all these free agents, whoever comes up and stuff. And it just, without getting into the technicalities of NFL, it feels completely the opposite of what Arsenal fans have been complaining about. It's funny. It could be something that they see over time, or maybe it's just American football is a different sport, but we shouldn't compare them. It's probably more accurate. But all in Liverpool and Arsenal.
Yeah, sorry, 1-1. Remember that? Yeah, 1-1. Yeah.
I just went off.
I'm just out my NFL head here, thinking of all the teams there, and the LA. I think it's because they're in LA and all the players just want to play there, so it's easy for them just to sign the free agents. They all want to go to LA.
Well, that's true. Yeah. That's true. Yeah. Just hopefully they're all not over the hill. If you're a Rams fan, City against Everton. I don't know. I always feel like this is a game from 1995 or something like that, when both teams were always terrible and you'd still watch it. But both teams aren't terrible at the moment. But Everton are struggling a little bit. Yeah. They've had a lot of injuries and a lot. You kind of feel like you haven't seen the real Everton yet under Benitez. But at the same time, they'd want to get their act together soon enough. We're talking about there's 5 managers gone already this season. I think Benitez has a little bit longer. But if you go to City and get a heavy beating here, I don't know. What do you think is going to happen?
I can't go on other than City win. Benitez be that type of manager, though. He just know Guardiola inside out and be able to set up against them. But I'm still, they're just going through just a bad run, though, aren't they? He's under pressure. He was under pressure to begin with, no matter what, just because of his Liverpool connection. So. They're on that point now where they could drop into the bottom half or go on a run. They're due a run, but I don't think it's going to start this weekend. I think they'll frustrate City a little bit and be well organised. I'm going to go for a City win. I'm going to go 3-1. Probably tight for the first half, and City to push on and get a few goals in the second half.
3-1 to City, so for that one. And then later on Sunday is going to be Spurs against Leeds. Leeds seem to have kind of found a little bit of form without maybe the results so far, but Spurs is the more interesting one here, I think, because it's like we're going to see Conte now after the international break, feet under the table a little bit more, and it's like, will we see a new Spurs? That's kind of Sunday will be the first test of that, really.
Yeah, I think it's a great appointment. This is real, Spurs are always just, you feel like they're just a bit soft, don't you? I don't know, a bit harsh on them maybe or not, but he's a man that'll harden them up. He takes no messing. Hearing stories about him over the years, he's a serious individual. So I can see him doing well there, and I would see Spurs beating Leeds. I'll go with 2-0 win to Spurs. But I think they've done so well to get Conte in. It's madness in how it's gone and how quickly they've changed their manager. But I think that's a good appointment. I think that was a good decision.
Yeah. Sometimes it is, you feel like it's harsh, but at the same time, I don't think there's many people who don't think that Conte is a better manager than Nuno. So when it comes to it, I suppose you're ruthless, but maybe it's the right decision. But we'll see how it goes. Anyway, that's Kevin's 1-2 free picks. You can play yourself on Ladbrokes.com or on the app now. Just pick the scores in the 3 games. Pick 1, you get €1 free bet. You pick 2, you get €5 free bet. You get all 3, you win €100 cash. Kevin's gone for Liverpool 1, Arsenal 1, Man City 3, Everton 1, and Spurs 2, Leeds 0 in the 3 games this weekend. So you can go on and play yourself now. Kevin, thanks a million. We'll chat to you next week. It'd be good to have the Premier League back. I'm sure a load of storylines will. Yeah. We went a half an hour there, and we only mentioned Manchester United once. So
no, we didn't talk about it. Let's not start now. We'll be talking about it next week. Don't worry.
Crisis talk coming next week. Thanks a million, Kevin. Talk to you soon. Don't forget as well, if you're having a bet on anything at all this weekend, or on the football, the rugby, whatever it might be, please always gamble responsibly. We're just having a bit of fun talking about it here. Gamble responsibly, and visit dunlewy.net for more information. Kevin will be back with us next week. Don't forget, you can listen back to Stephen Ferris as well. He was on with us yesterday to talk about Ireland, Argentina, and a little bit of reaction to Ireland and beating the All Blacks as well. Looking ahead to what's actually a brilliant day of rugby on Saturday outside of Ireland. There's some brilliant fixtures. You could sit down with the rugby and the football all day Saturday and have some day of sport watching if you have the time. And that'll all be on the back of Jason Quigley becoming world champion in the wee hours of Saturday morning. We're going to talk to Eric Donovan later on today to preview his world title fight on Friday night. So stay tuned for that as well. We'll talk to you soon.